Welcome to another Top 20 podcasts, a League 2 festive recap. We've had, only 3 rounds of fixtures in the end because 10 of 12 games were postponed on Sunday the 4th due to all that ice. This podcast is sponsored by Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. There has been loads of significant stuff that's happened over the last couple of weeks in League 2, and our job is to update you on it. Bit of housekeeping. League 2 has its own episode on the podcast feed this week, and we're going to trial this for January. So if you support a League 2 team, you will, for the next few weeks, be able to press play and go straight into League 2 chat. Obviously, that's a bit of a change. We've always done one podcast, 3 leagues over the last almost 10 years. But we're going to mix it up. We're going to try something new, and let's see whether it works or not. Let us know what you think, and if you feel very strongly either way. Next week, we'll have some mid-season predictions, which we always love doing. But for now, it's time to look back at the last 10 days. And George, will start at the very, very, very top, because Bromley, keep your eye on Bromley. You can't miss them right now. Maximum points, 3 wins out of 3 over this period. Added to the 3 they got before that, 6 wins in a row, 11 wins in 13. They are our league leaders. What a story.
What a story. A league that has been crying out for somebody to take it by the scruff of the neck and go on a run and kind of cement themselves as one of the best teams in the league. I didn't necessarily, you've been telling me to keep an eye on Bromley for about 18 months, and I took my eye off them for a second, and suddenly they're top of the league. What a run this has been either side of Christmas. It started for them with a ridiculous game on Boxing Day where they went to Bristol Rovers. Bristol Rovers, who hadn't won in 4.5 years, and they were 2-0 down at half time. But a Shaq Ford red card opened the door for them, and they walked straight through it, winning the game 3-2. And from there, they haven't really looked back, with a couple of wins off the back of that, going 1-0 down. They went 1-0 up against Crawley. Crawley equalised, and they won the game 3-1 thanks to that man, Michael Cheek, who is, the man that guarantees you goals. And not necessarily at their best from a defensive standpoint, but they hosted Newport County, who are better, as we'll discuss in a second, under Christian Fuchs, and got over the line there in a 2-1 win. Still incredibly good from set pieces, still pretty good at stopping the team from creating good chances, still pretty good from open play, still have Cheek, still have Kabamba, still just a team that are benefiting from the consistency of having a manager in Andy Woodman who knows exactly what he wants to get. Woodman was on 5 Live at the same time as me post-match on Boxing Day, and Aaron Paul, who was hosting, or either the interview or Aaron said, you're up in second or third, who'd have thought this? And he was like, us. Our aim is to get promoted. Our aim last season was to get in the playoffs. We were absolutely gutted to miss out. And it often happens with teams who come up from the National League and maybe aren't kind of EFL heritage names, where there is this assumption that they aren't ambitious. Bromley are very ambitious, and for everyone on the outside this might seem like a surprise, but internally I think they believe they are there on merit, and they probably believe they're the best team in League 2.
Absolutely love all of that. Absolutely love all of it. Only 2 teams have kept more clean sheets, but just such a repeatable and effective style of play, and some mentality as well. I think Woodman's playing a blinder with his rotation, particularly in the centre of the park, where Bromley have some really good options now. They've got a good group of central midfielders that offer, different parts of the game. And across this period, we had Ben Thompson coming up big against Bristol Rovers. Crowhouse, who's originally a Bromley kid that they sold to Brentford, got back on loan this season. He adds quality at the top of the pitch. Honda Mark puts in good performances as well. Charles is a kind of real veteran leader for them at the base of midfield as well. They're just amazing at the moment, and 11 wins from 13 games reflects that. It's quite remarkable. Walsall, I'm pretty sure they were top at the start of this bunch of games, but then now they dropped down a couple of places. A fairly poor return. It was a 1-0 win at home to Crewe, kind of as expected. Crewe were missing quite a lot of players, and Walsall got a 1-0 win, but at home to Oldham, didn't back it up, lost 2-1. It was a 96th minute winner from Oldham, an amazing moment for them. But they probably deserved it on the balance of play. They probably were the better side, which is slightly concerning. And then they went to Cambridge and they really struggled. 2-0 down, goals either side at half-time, and then only really creating anything near the end when they were already 2-0 down. So it's just 4 goals in their last 6 games for Walsall. They're very reliant on Dan Canu, as we know, for goals. They really don't have many other goal-scoring threats, apart from a sort of vague set-piece threat, which maybe isn't actually quite as potent as it has been previously. But overall, I think with Walsall, you just have to say that if them being good for a long period in the first half of the season wasn't surprising to us because we'd seen them do it before in a broadly similar manner, then them finding it tough for a period also isn't surprising, because we've seen that before as well with this Walsall side. And they're a team, I'd honestly think they are similar to Bromley in some ways. They have a style of play that creates generally quite tight games. Very rare would it be for either of these sides to absolutely dominate every facet of the football match. And at the moment, Bromley have, and this could be down to confidence, it could be down to specific coaching, it could be down to individuals. At the moment, it could be down to recruitment and the squad that they've built. At the moment, Bromley are experts at turning those tight-ish games into games where they're just comfortable and they end up winning because they're comfortable and they know what to do. And Walsall have been that team for large swathes of the last 18 months, but they've also been the team that when they lose a bit of confidence and maybe there's a couple of players that lose form, it looks really, really tough to watch and it looks very hard to see them winning lots of games. But yeah, they need to shake themselves out of the malaise, I think it's fair to say. Swindon, they lost narrowly to MK on Boxing Day, 1-0 away from home, but they backed it up really well. 2-0 wins against Cheltenham and against Gillingham. They are the team that just keep on rolling. There's been so many different iterations of Swindon Town this season, which I love. And it's partly because Holloway built a big old squad with just a lot of players. But I kind of feel like if you look at how they're winning games now compared to how they're winning games in August and September, it just feels very, very different. And, there's 4 clean sheets in their last 5 games. They generally score in every game. And so if they do have a period where they carry on this defensive resolve, they're going to keep winning games. They're going to stay in the top 3, which is where they are at the moment. Second, 2 points behind Bromley, 3 points ahead of Walsall and Salford, who are just below Walsall on goal difference. Then we've got MK on 41, Cambridge United on 41 in 6th, Chesterfield on 40 in 7th, and Notts on 23rd. We're going to dig into that playoff picture in due course, but George, we've got to give big, big, big love to the Sky Bet surprise candidates of the festive period.
Not the candidates, the winners.
The Sky Bet surprise winners of the festive period across the whole EFL is Accrington Stanley, who picked up maximum points, 9 from 9.
Yeah, I can't tell you what the ACCA odds would have been had you backed all 3 of these with Sky Bet, but probably fair to say pretty unlikely for them to get 9 points from 9, and certainly the most surprising team to profit from the Christmas period. And the story of this is in part having some favourable fixtures. They started off with a 2-1 win over Barrow having recently sacked manager Andy Wing, and prior to appointing their new manager, it was a ridiculously end-to-end game, 18 shots to 16 in Accrington's favour, but the XG read 2.2 for Barrow, 1.9 for Accrington, but they ended up on the right side of it thanks to a Josh Woods goal from a set piece in injury time to win the game 2-1. They then hosted Harrogate Town. Sean Wally, the hero here, with a penalty to make it 1-0 before Slater was sent off for Harrogate. This was a dominant performance from Accrington, who were able to convert possession into big chances consistently and got their just rewards. But then the result of Christmas, I would say certainly the biggest result for Accrington, but also maybe one of the shock results of the whole festive period, was Accrington Stanley, fresh off 2 wins, going away to Notts County, a team who had maybe struggled a little bit after a good period earlier on in December. Came into this one winless in 3, but still probably expecting to get 3 points at home, having got a decent point against MK the game before. But Accrington were really strong here. They didn't create too much in the first half, but restricted Notts County to very, very little. Didn't sit off, didn't let Notts County dictate play whatsoever, pressed high. And it was that man again, Sean Wally, 38 years of age, who scored the goal to make it 1-0 later on in the game. And they won it and they won it 1-0. So 3 games, 3 wins. Wally with 2 of the goals. I think we have to talk about him. If there's ever a player that is evergreen, it feels like it is Sean Wally, a player that scored 2 and 2, as we said, who's basically plays 90 minutes in every single game for them, which for a player of his age is pretty impressive. Still a pretty tireless runner, somebody who can create too, and with that goal scoring touch as well. So he's kind of the headline name for this. But there's one player that I want to point out who I think was maybe the most important player in this 3-game winning streak for Accrington Stanley, and that is their goalkeeper, Ollie Wright. Ollie Wright, who's on loan from Southampton, who's had a host of really good loans in the National League. This, his first taste of EFL football this season with Accrington Stanley, and if Sean Wally is a player with a lot of EFL experience, Ollie Wright is anything but that. But he only conceded 1 goal in these 3 games. That's despite coming under pretty severe pressure, certainly against Barrow, who had 6 shots on target. He only conceded 1 of those, but the expected goals on target against Accrington that day was 2.11. Harrogate, despite being second best for most of the game, had 3 shots on target. He made the 3 saves for an XGOT of 0.46. And then Notts County themselves also having a few opportunities through the game, just the 1 shot on target, but again, a really big save. And that amounted to a total expected goals on target of just under 3 and only 1 goal conceded. He's a player that Accrington fans are absolutely loving, seeing on social media, reading into his Instagram post saying that he's loving his time at Accrington Stanley, to suggest that he's not going to be recalled by Southampton as so many teams are. And he's a player that it seems like is going to play a big part in the rest of their season if they can keep hold of him. So Sky Bet surprise winners for this festive period, Accrington Stanley, who've pushed themselves, having earlier been threatened by relegation. They're now up in 14th with 33 points, miles clear of it, and wondering, just 7 points off the playoffs? Is it possible?
I honestly think it's one of the biggest overperformances in the EFL at the moment. Accrington's league position versus their budget. It's so impressive what John Doolan's done. And yeah, I mean, Wright has been a massive upgrade on the keepers they had last season, where they had by miles the lowest save percentage in the league, massively undermined them. What I noticed is that last season they faced the 6th fewest shots on target. So they really didn't face that many shots on target. They were one of the better defences in the league on that front, but conceded so many goals because the keepers just could not save them. Again this season, way more impressive defensively than I would have given them credit for. Just don't face very many shots on target. I think, again, the 6th best record in the league for shots on target faced. 7th it is, in fact. But with a better keeper in nets, that changes their goals against per game from 1.5 per game last season to 1.08 this season. And that takes you up the table. George, the big winners in the playoff picture were Cambridge United. They nicked Notts County's spot and had a fantastic time.
Yeah, a really good festive period for them. We've spoken about them quite a lot in the last few weeks, and it feels like they're turning a lot of games that earlier on in the season were draws. They've drawn so many games this season, but they haven't lost a game in any competition since October the 25th, which is some run. A team who are still defensively really, really sound, went away from home in a kind of bizarre game on Boxing Day against Gillingham, where Mark Bonner, former Gillingham manager, director of football at Cambridge, Neil Harris, former Gillingham manager, now manager of Cambridge United, drew that game 1-1, then went to Chesterfield and won the game 1-0. Again, I had to live on the edge a little bit in the second half, where Chesterfield had some good chances, but were able to see the game out. And then finished off their nice festive time before the game was postponed against Grimsby with a really kind of statement 2-0 win at home to Walsall. Both goals coming from Ben Knight, who's having a really good season, having kind of been eased into the side over the course of the campaign. Big game for him, kind of just a big result against a team who I think we can be pretty sure are going to be towards the top end this season. A little bit, again, if you're looking at kind of chance creation and underlying numbers, the opposition, it's not like they kind of kept them completely quiet throughout games. In particular, Walsall had 11 shots, an XG of 1.56. But for the most part, this has been really, really impressive with Cambridge, who I still feel like, taking out Bromley from the equation, maybe the most solid of these teams at the top end of League Two in terms of what they offer.
10 games unbeaten, 0s and 1s in every single one of those 10 games, it is very, very impressive how high their floor is. And if we're shouting out keepers, Jake Eastwood has been so much better than I thought he was going to be. He was at Grimsby last season. I feel like at Grimsby, always found it quite difficult to nail down the spot. Therefore, I was quite surprised when Cambridge signed him and made him their number one. He has objectively been one of the best goalkeepers in the division. His goals prevented number is the second best in the league behind Ollie Wright per Opta Analyst. Also in the mix, Salford City, there they are in fourth. They got 6 points from their 3 games. Wins against Barrow, a 2-1 win with Dan Udo and Kelly Namai on the score sheet. A 1-0 win against Harrogate with a Dan Udo penalty. I'd say those 2 wins were kind of expected. The 0-0 at home to Fleetwood, I guess, would have been quite disappointing. This wasn't the hardest run of games for Salford. Having said that, if you zoom out a little bit, it's 17 points from 7 games. Really, really strong return. That has them level on points with Walsall in third. They have so many good players, don't they? And it's just a classic Carl Robinson run. You've seen this a million times before. The only question is, like, how long does this run carry on for? And is there a classic Carl Robinson dip, a winless run on the horizon? That will dictate whether Salford finish in the top 3, which is kind of how their recent form tracks, or potentially, falling down into 5th, 6th, 7th, possibly even lower if other teams improve, if they do have a dip. In terms of those other teams, I mean, George, Chesterfield are an interesting one. 6 points from their 4 games. Big comeback at MK on Sunday, 2-0 down to 2-2. And 3 players in the starting 11 that they only announced when the team sheet came out.
Yeah, often think, why don't we always do this? Why don't we just announce summer signings when the first team sheet comes out in early August, and you can look at your team and be like, oh my God, we signed him. And that's kind of what Chesterfield got here. And interesting signings as well. I think Sil Svinkels is somebody who's shown previously that he's quite a good centre-back at this level. Had a good loan last season. The one that I'm most excited by, who came in and played 90 minutes at MK, is Sammy Braybrook, who has been just phenomenal at Newport County this season. It's a huge blow to Newport that he's gone. I definitely thought that he was going to be going to League One.
He's just amazing, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's genuinely just amazing.
He just does everything.
Looking at some radars earlier, and he's just, as you say, it's like...
His radar is a circle.
He's really good at football, but he's also really good at running and tackling.
Yeah, and having had I think he did his ACL 18 months or 2 years ago or so, so impressive that he still has the physical ability to do that, just like you, Ali. And it's, so, a big comeback draw for them. Will Grigg scoring against MK Dons in the 94th minute to come back from 2-0 down to draw 2-2. That was off the back of a 1-1 draw against Oldham, where it was a pretty alarming performance, I guess, from Chesterfield. Like, they were definitely second best throughout the game. Really, Oldham having the better chances, albeit Chesterfield came on quite strong towards the end. The defeat to Cambridge that I've already mentioned. So not a great. It kind of feels like their season. Like, not a great festive period, but like not huge amount of damage done, and they are still in 7th and taking out one of the playoff berths. It just doesn't feel like Chesterfield will have to improve that much in order to kind of have a big say this season, which is kind of a strange thing to say given that they haven't really been overly convincing. But yeah, definitely like the signings of Swinkles and of Braybrook.
So 1 point above them are MK in 5th, and 1 point beneath Chesterfield are Notts, who have dropped out into 8th. These teams kind of had a bit of a mini league because 29th saw MK host Notts, 1-1 draw. Obviously, the Sunday saw MK host Chesterfield, 2-2 draw. But overall, it wasn't a great couple of weeks for Notts County.
No, not a great couple of weeks. After, this is League Two, this is what happens. You have a really good run of form, and then you normally follow up with a pretty disappointing one. Fixture's not easy, should say. Like Walsall, Chesterfield, MK Dons, not the easiest run. I think you have to file the points against Walsall, albeit the Walsall game was at home, and they were definitely the better team there. Walsall just had one shot in that game prior to Christmas. But since then, 1 point taken against MK Dons, which came thanks to a early goal, end of the first half goal from your Pender. But that's a good point away from home. it's the Accrington result that's kind of the one that really sticks out. Like, you're looking at a game here where if Notts County win this game 1-0, if they take one of their chances at 0-0, it's probably quite a good Christmas period for them. 4 points from 3 games, it's okay, including a home win and an away point against MK Dons. But instead, it's a bit of a earth with a bump defeat against Aki. Again, not too much damage done. They're still in 8th, but they put themselves in a pretty convincing position. But as we know in League Two, any team that rises towards the top normally falls back as quickly as they came.
Yeah, I want to look down at the relegation picture, and you kind of have to shield your eyes because it's pretty ghastly down there. There's a group of teams, 5 in particular, who are very poor, and we'll get into all of them. But we'll start with Barrow because we've got a new manager in the league, and we love talking about new managers. They got just the 1 point from their 3 games over the Christmas period, but they did get a new manager, and it's a very recognisable face and name, very recognisable penalty-taking technique. Paul Gallagher gets his first senior head coach role. He's been coaching at your Stoke Cities and your Prestons over the last couple of years, and he'll take Barrow forward. Chief Exec Ian Wood saying the recent games against Tranmere and Salford have seen an upturn in performance levels, and we believe that as Paul's influence increases, performances will continue to improve. I need to apologise because I said Barrow got 1 point in this time frame, but they absolutely did not. They got a great win against Tranmere. It was 3 points in the 3 games. What are your thoughts on the appointment?
Yeah, it's always hard to know with these. You know, he's a name that we know very well from the EFL. I'm sure he will command some respect from the players walking into the training ground for the first time. He's done his coaching. You know, he's been a first team coach at Preston. He's been a first team coach at Stoke. Worked under Alex Neil in both of those. He's been a caretaker manager previously at Stoke too. So, you know, he's got some experience. But it's pretty impossible for me sitting here to have any kind of opinion on what he's going to be. You know, I don't necessarily think that Barrow are in as much trouble that they have to go out and hire someone who is a firefighter, who has that perception of bringing a certain gravitas to the role. I think they're still, you know, well within their rights to go for someone who they believe is the best coach long term for the club. And I'm excited to see how they get on. You know, I thought Andy Wing was relatively harshly treated in terms of being sacked, but you can't get away from the fact that their performances have been better since he moved on. Certainly from an attacking point of view, pretty leaky at the back. Their games have been very end to end since. So yeah, intrigued to see how it goes. I still think there are massive deficiencies in terms of the squad quality. I still think their first, you know, Gallagher's job is to keep them up this season. If he does that, then he's probably done okay. Yeah,
I mean, it's a club whose 2 best managers in the last decade were a first-time manager in Ian Evatt and Pete Wild, who obviously had been with Halifax in the National League. So, and they've tried quite a few different options of different flavours. So, yeah, intrigued to see how Gallagher goes. Bristol Rovers got 3 points in their 3 games. They moved up 2 places despite losing at home to both Bromley and Barnet. That's because Steve Evans got his first win as Gas manager, a 3-0 win at Shrewsbury. Now, they were quite fortunate that John Marquis hit the post with a 1-on-1 when very, very well placed, but Bristol Rovers clearly the better side in the second half. And it was a Fabrizio Cavern hat-trick that secured them the 3-0 win. But I want to talk about Shaq Ford because Shaq Ford had an absolute shocker when he got sent off a couple of weeks ago for a really just a nonsense red card to receive that really hurt his team. And so I was quite surprised to see him on the pitch. I honestly thought there might be some sort of punishment or, like, given how bad the vibes have been, that you might just come to the end of your tether with a player like that and go, you know what, if I can't trust you, you won't play. But instead, Evans has gone, you know what, I think you could be quite good. So I'm going to try and motivate you to be better. And every single good thing that happened in attack for Rovers in the second half in particular came down his side on the right. He found space time and time again. I mean, some of the defending from Shrewsbury is genuinely disgusting. But Ford made the most of it and Caven mopped up for 3 goals. So that was a good win for them, and just getting a win, I think, was quite something because they hadn't won in the league since the 27th of September. 3 full calendar months between league wins. Shrewsbury, they lost all 3 games. They lost 3-1 at Cheltenham. They lost 1-0 at Grimsby. They lost 3-0 at home to Bristol Rovers. They dropped down 2 places to 22nd. They're 2 points above Newport and Harrogate at the moment, and they're level on points with Crawley. They are desperately poor and very little saving grace right now. They haven't won in 8. Appleton is still the manager, and there are a number of reasons why that could be the case. I think one of them is possibly because Appleton's quite good at transfers normally. He's quite good at getting good loanees normally, and that might be worth keeping him on.
I honestly think that there will be a belief internally that he's doing a much better job than externally. I think and this isn't me just being an Appleton lover, because I've been pretty negative about Shrews all season, but in the list of issues that they've got, I think they're probably a bad decision away from kind of crumbling, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Getting pretty ugly with Crawley as well. They got 1 point from 4 games, and it came on Boxing Day at home to Colchester, a 1-1 draw. Then they lost 3-1 to Bromley. They lost 2-1 to Barnet, and the worst of the lot, a 3-0 defeat at Cheltenham. Reports of some verbals between Scott Lindsay and the away fans. They've already made quite a few signings. They're proactively trying to add to the squad. It's already quite a big squad, and it's pretty concerning, both the sort of direction of travel and the performances. And then there's Harrogate, who are bottom of the league. They got no points from their 3 games. They lost all 3 without scoring. At Salford 1-0, at Accrington 1-0, and then a 2-0 defeat at home to Tranmere. Harrogate have got 3 points in 14 games, and it is just ugly as sin down at the bottom. Harrogate 17, Newport 17, Shrewsbury 19, Crawley 19. That's 5 teams that are way off 1 point per game. Then Bristol Rovers 21 from 24. And then you hit 1 point per game with Barrow on 24 from 24. There's some positivity at Newport County, because they won a home game for the first time since March. And it was Christian Fuchs' first win.
As brought to you on the betting show.
As brought to you on the betting show. And it was Fuchs' first win. It was 2-0 home win against Crew Alex. I guess, crucially, it was a back-to-back clean sheet, because they drew 0-0 at home to Barnet the game before. Fuchs has to sort the defence out, because Newport just simply are not going to be a good enough attacking team to shoot their way out of relegation zone. He's gone back to a back 3. Looks like he's going to settle with Clark, Baker and Jenkins as the back 3. I think that's a good idea. Get some consistency at the back, build from there. But Braybrook is gone, and Braybrook was their best player by absolute miles, and their other central midfield options are pretty poor, to be quite honest. If you told me that Matt Smith and Kai Whitmore would be fit for every game between now and the end of the season, I'd take some positives, but there's no evidence that will be the case. Matt Smith can't play more than about 2 games at a time, and Whitmore is pretty similar. So yeah, I mean, some positivity because of that home win. I just think the emotion of it after 6.5 months was probably just massive. But it's Fuchs' only win in 8 games so far, and I looked at the underlying numbers earlier. I don't really see any major improvements in any particular performance metrics. So yeah, the only thing that I think is a massive positive for Newport is the fact that Crawley and Shrewsbury and Harrogate are all absolutely honking as well, and only 2 of those 4 can go down. But right now, I genuinely wouldn't be able to tell you who I think that would be. It's pretty rank down there. Cheltenham have got themselves well away from it. Cottrell's got 8 wins in 15 games, which is pretty incredible, really. And it might be helpful for them to bank up some points, because Elek has left, and he's provided them plenty in a short spell. Archer has gone to Luton, and Reece Hutchinson, he hasn't been recalled by Bristol Rovers, but I guess there's a window in which they might do that, if only just to kind of weaken a team that's only 9 points above them in the table. So, but you have to just take your hat off to Cottrell and Cheltenham, because I thought they were as bad as the teams that I've just been talking about, and they're very much not right now. George, in terms of any other business, some good results for Barnet and Grimsby. Barnet moved up 2 places. Grimsby moved up 3. They are 11th and 12th, respectively.
Yeah, 2 teams coming off the back of a difficult run and kind of putting the wrongs right. For Barnet, a couple of big wins against Bristol Rovers and against Crawley, but that came after a really disappointing 0-0 draw away from home against Newport, and a couple of defeats before that against Salford and Chesterfield. So, I'm a big Barnet believer and still think they have a part to play this season, but it's hard to get away from the fact that, a run of form before Christmas has probably put pay to any chances they had of really troubling the top three. For Grimsby, things have got really, really, really bad, and I'm not really sure why. They'd gone from being this slick attacking team, really good watch, to suddenly being quite dour, and they were very close to going back-to-back 0-0 draws on the 26th and 29th, 0-0 draw at home to Oldham, and they were coasting towards a 0-0 draw against Shrewsbury before Amalazor scored with 5 minutes or so to go, and they followed that up with a 1-0 win away at Fleetwood with Jays Gabier scoring in the 89th minute. It's hard to really kind of capture just how important those two goals are. I think, like, if they draw those 3 games 0-0, I think the season kind of looks like it's drifting into real obscurity. And, even though I'm a huge fan of Dave Artell, you're probably looking at him and wondering, how has this happened? How have we gone from being this free-flowing attacking side to one that can't really find a way to score? Like, they have to improve further, but they put themselves back in a position where the top 7 isn't beyond their reach. And hopefully they can use those results to find a way to get back to their previous early season form.
Yeah, good stuff. More other business. Gills. 2 points from 3 games. Tough fixtures, in fairness. At home to Cambridge, 1-1 draw. At home to Colchester, 1-1 draw. Not disastrous, not particularly exciting. Travel to Swindon, lose 2-0. Gills flew down 4 places in the table. They are now 16th. And this was the team that had the longest unbeaten run to start the season, you may remember. It's 1 win in 15 games for Gillingham in the league, which is pretty remarkable. Now, more than half of the games have been draws, 8 draws in that time, 1 win and 6 defeats. But basically over now, what is about a third of a season, they've been slightly better than pure relegation fodder. And that's a bit of a concern. And, they are miles away from making the playoffs right now. And you do wonder about the kind of energy around the place if the season just drifts. I'm not particularly worried about them getting sucked into any relegation battle. But there's a few teams now that are quite far above the relegation zone, but aren't really showing signs of making a legitimate assault on the playoffs. And I always just think those seasons can just get quite boring. And when things get boring, people get bored and they start getting rash. And I'm just pretty unimpressed all round. Colchester had 2 away draws at Gills and Crawley, and then a home win against MK Dons with an injury time penalty. So I think they can be fairly happy with that. 5 points from 3 games. They moved up 2 spots. They're 4 points off the playoffs. Crewe are in amongst it as well. They lost at Walsall and then they lost at Newport. Now, losing at Newport was enough for some knives to come out for Lee Bell, which happens every 2 months or so, only for him or his team to beat Cheltenham by 4-1. Crewe 5 points off the playoffs in 10th. Fleetwood not only didn't win in their 3 games, they didn't even score. Lost at Tranmere 1-0, drew at Salford 0-0, then lost 1-0 at home to Grimsby. They're another team that just seem to have a bit of a ceiling on them. 13th at the moment on 34 points, so that's 6 points off the playoffs. And then there's Tranmere, who did pretty well with 6 points from their 3 games, wins against Fleetwood and against Harrogate. They lost at home to Barrow. Good opportunity for them to have picked up 9 points from 9, but no. It was a really poor first half display against Barrow. 17th place, these are one of these teams like Gills where I just think they're miles above the relegation zone. There's very little jeopardy at the moment with Tranmere, but a lot of work to do even to get in the top half. And if they don't, you have to say it's another pretty unexciting season for Tranmere. So I'd like to see a bit more from them over the next couple of months. And that endeth the lesson. With apologies to Oldham, I almost missed you out. There you are in this group of teams that are sort of looking up at the top half saying, could we get there? And recent form suggests maybe. They drew at Grimsby, good result. They won at Walsall, sensational result. And then they drew at home to Chesterfield. So pretty tough fixtures, pretty good points return, pretty impressive stuff. 15th level on points with Gills and Tranmere, and need to force their way. They need to target your Crews and your Barnets and your Grimsbys before anything else. That's been a good, fun overview of what is a terrific league and a really entertaining few weeks. With thanks to Skybet and the Skybet EFL Building Foundations Fund for sponsoring this podcast. It's been a great festive period in the EFL. You're all caught up now. If you want to hear the League One and League Two, the League One and the Championship versions, they're also on wherever you found this one, whether it's on the podcast feed or on YouTube. Do let us know in the comments what you reckon. And next week, it's time for the mid-season predictions. Cheers. Go well.